My sister died on their property. They said it was an accident. They called her troubled, but I found her voicemail. She screamed before the water swallowed her. So I built a new identity. Before you hear my story, tap subscribe and drop a comment where you're watching from. They dressed her in lavender. My sister, Ava. 14 years old. Hair still in 2 braids, skin still carrying the warmth of summer. The funeral home told us it was best to keep the casket closed, but I'd insisted. I needed to see her face one last time. Needed to prove to myself that it was real. The makeup couldn't hide the bruises. Not the ones on her cheekbone. Not the faint purple ring around her neck. Not the lie they tried to sell us. They said it was a boating accident. A tragic misstep at the Kingston family lake house. She slipped. She drowned. Nobody saw her fall. Except I knew my sister. Ava was terrified of deep water. She never even learned to swim. The Kingstons were local royalty. Old money. Legacy. Political ties deeper than their pool of lawyers. They were above consequence, and they knew it. The accident happened on their property. Their son, William Kingston, was the last to be seen with Ava. And yet, no charges. No investigation. Just condolences wrapped in charity donations and private apologies. I stood at her grave as the earth swallowed the last piece of her. And something inside me broke clean in half. It started with the silence. The kind that isn't natural. That doesn't belong in grief. The Kingstons reached out once. A single bouquet delivered to our door. No note. No visit. My mother stopped speaking altogether. She sat in her chair by the window for hours, like she was waiting for Ava to walk back up the drive. My father drank until his silence turned to slurring and fists punched through plaster walls. The police report was a joke. 2 pages. I read it so many times I had it memorized. The phrasing, the timestamp, even the typos. There were no interviews. No autopsy photos. Just a closing statement. No signs of foul play. Case closed. They closed it. Like she was a file in a cabinet. Like she was something inconvenient they needed to shelve. I stopped being me after that. No more school. No more sleep. Just long nights and cold cups of coffee, chasing the holes in their story. Then I found the voicemail. It was buried in Ava's old phone. A recording, half drowned in static. I don't want to go in, Al. He said it's a game, but he was weird today. I think he took something. He got mad when I said no. It ended in a loud splash. And a scream. A girl's scream. I took it to the police. They said it proved nothing. They said it was probably a prank. They said the phone must have malfunctioned. That's when I realized. They weren't just ignoring me. They were protecting him. William Kingston. Golden boy. Varsity soccer. That smile they put on brochures. He gave a speech at graduation the month after Ava died. The crowd cheered. The mayor shook his hand. I stood in the back, staring at the monster they'd painted in gold leaf. He looked right through me. That's when the idea took root. Not rage. Not yet. Just clarity. I couldn't outpower them. But maybe, just maybe, I could outplay them. My name is Elena Ray. At least, that's the name on my resume. On my driver's license. on the invitation I received last week to the Kingston Foundation Gala. But my real name. It died the same day Ava did. It took 5 years. 5 years of meticulous planning. Of plastic surgery to soften my jawline. Of speech coaching to smooth the rough edge of my voice. Of fake transcripts, fake references, and a very real degree in business finance. I built a new life. One designed to pass every test and open every door. Including the door to the Kingston family. I started with the youngest, Charlotte Kingston. Daddy's princess. Columbia dropout. Addicted to yoga, Adderall, and influencers who sold sea moss. She was hiring an assistant for her fashion startup. I applied under the name Elena Ray. She loved me. Said I got her vibe. I worked there 6 months. Showed up early. Covered for her hangovers. Got her brand into 2 influencers' hands. Then I casually ran into William one day at brunch. He didn't recognize me, of course. Not with the honey brown hair. Not with the smile. Not with the careful air of sophistication I wore like perfume. He said, "You look familiar." I smiled. "You probably say that to all the girls you want to ask out." He laughed. Bought me a drink. 6 weeks later, I was his girlfriend. 8 months later, he asked me to move in. And I said yes. To the ring. To the last act. To the lie that would finally reveal the truth. He talked in his sleep sometimes. Not full sentences. Just fragments. But enough. Don't tell her. She slipped. They said she wouldn't remember. I recorded everything. Every whisper. Every confession made in wine or guilt. The first time I stood in his childhood bedroom, I felt sick. The walls were blue. The closet still held a dusty trophy case. I stared at the photos on the nightstand. One of them, blurry in the background, was from the summer of Ava's death. She was there. Just a speck behind the crowd. And beside her, partially cut off by the frame, was someone else. A face I'd seen once before. The caretaker. The one who swore Ava had gone into the lake alone. That night, I whispered to him. "Do you ever wonder if anyone still suspects?" He tensed. "About what?" "That summer. No one remembers. It was an accident." "Was it?" "Elena." His tone sharpened. "Don't push. You're better than that." And I smiled. Because now I knew. He wasn't just guilty. He was afraid. 2 weeks before our wedding, I found a locked drawer in his father's study. Inside was a red file. Labeled, Incident, Summer 2019. I opened it with shaking hands. Photos. Not of Ava. But of her diary pages, scanned and time-stamped. One entry read. "He gets weird when he drinks." I tried to tell his dad, but he said I was exaggerating. "I want to go home." There it was. The proof they'd buried. Not just her body, but her voice. The Kingstons knew. And they buried the truth right beside her. I sat in the dark that night, listening to the old voicemail again. And for the first time in 5 years, I cried. Not out of grief. But because the storm was finally coming. I was the storm. And they had no idea. The Kingston estate had always reminded me of a mausoleum. Stone pillars. Black marble floors. Walls so thick they could muffle screams. But that day, standing at the top of the grand staircase in a white silk robe, diamond ring on my finger, and their heir asleep in my bed, I didn't feel small. I felt like a queen preparing her final speech before the execution. It started with Patricia Kingston, William's mother. She'd always viewed me like I was chewing with my mouth open, tolerated only because I fit the family aesthetic. The perfect, educated, pretty enough social climber who knew her place. She didn't know I had a burner phone full of recorded conversations. She didn't know I'd replaced her assistant's hard drive and cloned her emails. She definitely didn't know I was the girl who sat alone at Ava's funeral, counting the lies whispered behind black veils. So I targeted her first. One thread. A subtle unraveling. I printed copies of 2 emails. One where she ordered hush money for the caretaker. The other where she described Ava as a troublesome girl who needs to be handled before summer guests arrive. I mailed them to her personal trainer. Then her charity board. Then her church. Within a week, her phone never stopped buzzing. Within 2, her seat on the board of the Arts Council was regretfully vacated. I watched her cry in her Range Rover from the upstairs window. She had no idea where the leak was coming from. Only that something was cracking in her flawless world. Every night, I played my role. The doting fiancé. Soft-spoken. Grateful. Barely smart enough to ask real questions. But William loved to talk. Especially when drunk. And when drunk, he confessed. Sometimes I think about that night, he whispered once, lying on my lap. I traced circles on his collarbone. What about it? She hit her head. It was so fast. There was blood. He stopped. Swallowed. Stared at the ceiling like it would swallow him. I didn't mean for it to happen. There it was. Not denial. Not a lie. Regret. But regret wasn't enough. Not for Ava. I tracked him down through old payroll records. Frank Dawson. 68. Fired the summer Ava died. Paid off quietly. He lived in a trailer park 2 hours away. Drank himself half-blind. Said he didn't want trouble. Said he was scared. Said he'd kept the real story quiet because they threatened my granddaughter. Told me she'd lose her scholarship. I told him I didn't need him to testify. Just to give me what he had. He handed me a flash drive. 1 video file. Time-stamped. Shaky camera footage. A girl screaming. A splash. A blurred figure dragging something heavy. Then darkness. It wasn't everything. But it was enough. I wore their lies like a designer dress. Every gala, every brunch, every smug family dinner, I smiled while holding the knife beneath the tablecloth. The day I confronted William's father, I wore the same color Ava was buried in. Lavender. He was on the balcony, swirling bourbon in a crystal glass. "You've come far, Elena," he said. "Impressive, considering where you came from." "Oh, I'm not done climbing," I smiled. He raised a brow. "Ambitious. I like that. I'm sure you said the same about Ava, right before you had her buried." He stiffened. Just a flicker. But it was there. Recognition. Guilt. Fear. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I stepped closer. "I know she was pregnant." His eyes widened. "I know you paid for it to go away. I know William was out of control. And I know you covered it all. He said nothing. Didn't deny it. Didn't threaten me. Just turned away. And I knew he was calculating. Trying to decide whether I could be silenced too. I let him wonder. That was the beginning of his fall. The Kingstons weren't a family. They were a power structure. And power structures crumble best when turned against themselves. I leaked a single photo to the press. A scan of Ava's diary page. No name. Just enough to stir whispers. Then I arranged for the gala's key speaker, a senator, to receive an anonymous tip. By the time the event rolled around, security was tight, eyes were watching. But the Kingstons had no idea where the fuse was lit. That night, as William held my waist and smiled for photos, I slipped the flash drive into a journalist's coat pocket. It contained everything. The caretaker's footage. The voicemail. The emails. Ava's diary. By morning, it was online. Trending. Headline. Elite family tied to teen's suspicious death, new evidence surfaces. It wasn't dramatic. No arrests at dawn. No handcuffs in the spotlight. But the slow rot began. Patricia was dropped from every board. The father's investments were pulled. Stock tanked. Sponsors fled. William's name was erased from 3 nonprofit boards before noon. And him. He unraveled. Screamed at his assistant. Threw a chair in his father's office. He came home drunk. Shouting. You did this, didn't you? I stared at him. Calm. Did what? Don't play dumb. You've been spying. Lying. This is all you. Funny, I said. That's exactly what you said to Ava. He froze. Eyes glassy. Confused. What do you mean? She called me that night, William. I stepped closer. I heard the splash. I heard her scream. And I've been hearing it for 5 years. I showed him the flash drive. You buried her. And I dug it all up. He dropped to his knees. Sobbing. Whispering her name like it could save him. But it was too late. The world finally saw him for what he was. And I didn't need to lift a finger. There were no trials. No jail time. Just the slow, inescapable death of legacy. Their businesses collapsed. Their social circles shrank. The mansion was put up for sale. And I left. Without a word. Without a note. Just a lavender scarf on the bed. There's a moment after revenge is done. When the storm settles, the sky clears, and all you're left with is the silence. I expected it to feel empty. But it didn't. It felt clean. Like fresh air after a long, bitter winter. I vanished the same way I arrived, quietly. One bag. No goodbye. No social media trace. I left the engagement ring on William's nightstand. Next to it, I placed a photo of Ava. It was the one from our last summer together, her standing in the backyard, holding a melting popsicle, laughing like the world was still fair. I had it framed in lavender. Same color she wore in her casket. Same color I wore when I destroyed them. I changed my name back to Elise Waters. The one Ava used to scribble in glitter pens on my notebooks, surrounded by hearts and badly drawn stars. Elise the Brave, she used to call me. Because you always fight back. Funny. I didn't feel brave at her funeral. But I suppose sometimes bravery isn't loud. Sometimes, it's made of patience. Of silence. Of pretending to smile while you load the final bullet. The media tried to chase me. They caught on eventually. Pieced together timelines. Names. Some wanted a TV interview. A book deal. One woman called me the new Erin Brockovich with lipstick and teeth. I said no. To all of it. This wasn't a story for TV. It wasn't entertainment. This was for Ava. And Ava wouldn't have wanted fame. She would have wanted truth. 3 months after I disappeared, I got a letter. Handwritten. From Charlotte Kingston. I don't know if you'll read this. I just wanted you to know I didn't know. Not all of it. Not what William did. What our parents covered. I was stupid. But not cruel. I'm sorry. She signed it with her full name. It didn't matter. I didn't need her apology. But part of me appreciated it anyway. It meant the rot didn't reach all of them. That maybe Ava's name could still plant a seed of something good. I hadn't visited her in years. Not because I forgot. Because I couldn't. Until now. I brought fresh flowers, lavender and white. The headstone was simple. Ava Waters. Beloved daughter. Sister. Taken too soon. I sat cross-legged in front of it, the way we used to sit in the grass, legs touching, whispering secrets. It's done, I told her. They know, Ava. The world knows. And they can never unknow it. I placed the old flash drive beside the flowers. Not because it still mattered. But because I wanted it buried with her, so the truth would stay hers. People always ask that in stories like these. Was it worth it? Did I lose myself along the way? Here's the truth. I lost myself the day Ava died. Everything since then was just the road back. And guilt? No. I don't feel guilty. They made their choices. I just made sure the consequences finally arrived. I used part of the hush money I siphoned through fake accounts, yes, that's real, to fund a non-profit in Ava's name. The Ava Waters Foundation. It supports girls from low-income families who experience abuse or are ignored by the system. We give them lawyers, mentors, shelter, and most importantly, a voice. Because Ava never got hers. But others will now. And maybe that's the most honest justice. There's one dream I have, over and over. It's simple. Just Ava and I, sitting under the old willow tree in our backyard. She's barefoot, swinging her legs, telling me some ridiculous theory about how fireflies are really spirits in disguise. I laugh. She laughs harder. And for a moment, I forget the darkness. I wake up smiling. That's how I know I did the right thing. Because now, when I think of her, I don't just see her casket. I see her light. Some people think revenge is loud. Explosions. Screams. Headlines. But the best kind of revenge. It's quiet. Calculated. It sits across from its enemies, eats dinner with them, wears their name on a ring. And then leaves them in ruins. I didn't just destroy them. I rewrote the ending. They buried my sister. They buried the truth. And I dug it all up. Piece by piece. Until Ava wasn't just a memory. She was justice. And I was her sword. Tell me below, Have you ever turned pain into purpose? If you felt that revenge burns slow and cold, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more real-life revenge stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for being part of this healing. Until next time. Stay steady. Stay kind.